What's up, my friends? I hope you're doing well. And today I'm so excited because we're going to dive into the breakdown, the composition and songwriting breakdown, specifically about my newest song called Work It Out. And in case you're not aware, this is a collaboration with Mattia. He very kindly offered to do the orchestration and the mix for this song. So it was really a pleasure to kind of work together and kind of put together a product that I'm really proud of. And I hope Mattia likes it as well. I hope if you've heard the song, I hope you like it too. If you haven't, feel free to go listen to it, but we'll also play it at the very end of this video, so maybe don't do that right now. But I want to share with you kind of how I came about putting the song together, my songwriting process, and hopefully you can take away a couple of ideas that you can incorporate into your own writing as well. And of course, at any time, if you want to write music in sort of a Disney style, then you can grab the free guide in the description box below that goes over exactly how to write in that Disney style that, creates music that sounds magical, full, adventurous, and so on and so forth. Just so you know, that is there in the description box for you as a gift to you for watching this video. So let's kind of dive in. First of all, with a lot of the recent songs that I've been writing recently, I do usually start with a lyrical concept. So I usually start to go with a message that I really want to strongly deliver throughout the entirety of the song or the piece of music. And in this case, because it is lyrics, it's a song. So that's the first thing I want to come up with is the concept. So I kind of didn't really know exactly, the topic I wanted to go into, but as a general idea, I knew I wanted to talk about all the wars and disagreements around the world. Can't we find some way to work it out? So it's almost like a feel good song, kind of a comforting song, one where we can all work together to make things better, right? So, with the war in Ukraine and all of that stuff going on, kind of relates to that subject. And then another thing I like to write down is why people should care about this song. So here I just wrote down issues and fights have always been present, but now more than ever, we need love, understanding, and acceptance to come together and move forward. So the purpose of me writing this is like whenever maybe I'm feeling stuck or if I'm just wondering about where the song is heading, I can refer back to this sentence and remind myself what the message of the song is really all about. So that's just a way for me to keep myself in check. And then here, I just do a little brainstorm. So I literally write down all the thoughts that come to mind when I think about the topic of working it out, of wars and disagreements and things like that. And you can see the lyrics are not complicated at all. Like, I mean, these are not even lyrics. These are literally just thoughts that I've written down, bullet points, right? The battles never end, the burning pain and fire in our hearts, there's no end in sight. So these are just little sentences, little ideas. And this is just for me to pull as little ideas from, like a bank of information. I just pull from here and there, and then I shape the lyrics from there. So once I did this, I usually aim for around 10 to 20 bullet points, as many as I can think of. And then I'll go through and structure out or set up the structure of the song. So I kind of knew I wanted the structure to be a traditional pop song structure. So verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. And then I knew I also wanted a pre-chorus in there as well to kind of lead us into the chorus. But you'll notice that I tried to set a very specific message or intention for each section of the song. So for verse 1 and verse 2, they're basically saying the same thing, right? So the verse 1, the world is broken. There's so many wars and fights around the world. Verse 2, so many people are sad and desperate for a better life. So I typically like to think of verse 2 as a slightly more descriptive version of verse 1. So it can go into a little bit more detail, whereas verse 1 is establishing the setting and the characters and all of that for the very first time. So you want to be a little bit more general in general. And then the pre-choruses, again, they kind of take us into the chorus. They kind of give us that hope in this case. So what will it take before we change, right? And then and then we go into the choruses, which all say the same thing essentially. So let's work it out. Let's try to understand each other and move forward. That's kind of the gist of the chorus. And then the bridge is taking that more positive spin on the verses. So rather than saying like, oh, everything is sad, like everyone is scared, now the bridge is saying, why don't we take an action to combat that? So I said, like, let's shake hands, let's sit down together to set our differences aside to benefit the whole world, right? You can, like, this is super cheesy stuff, but there's always a fine balance, because if you go too traditional, then it sounds cliche, like things that people have already talked about a million times. So putting your own spin on things is super important. And I felt like over time, I've started to find my own voice in my lyric writing. And I've tried to keep my lyrics relatively easy to understand and simple, because I'm a simple person. But at the same time, I want them to be interesting as well. So I try to be a little descriptive when I find appropriate as well, as you can see here in verse 1. But in general, let's just go over the structure of these lyrics. So it's like I've never seen the world before. Everywhere I seem to turn, right? So that there is the first little phrase. And then another fight, another war, every nation burns. So here I wanted to rhyme lines 2 and 4, turn and burns, okay? Same idea with these lines over here, eyes and why. So every night when I lay down, the moment when I close my eyes, my thoughts come back, they scream out loud, always asking why. So I'm not necessarily rhyming lines 1 and 3 because lines 2 and 4 are already doing the rhyming. If I rhymed lines 1 and 3 and 2 and 4, I would personally feel a bit cheesy there because it's very obviously trying to rhyme every single line, if that makes sense, you know? So in this case, rhyming lines 2 and 4 gives us that bit of flexibility. It keeps the structure while, allowing the lyrics to feel conversational. I think that's really important. And if you listen to the song, you'll notice that this melody here is not very adventurous because it's the verse. I don't want it to climax yet. I want to save that for the chorus. So I'm basically doing a lot of steps and the occasional skip, but I'm not singing any interval above like a fourth or a fifth. It's like I've never seen the world before. Everywhere I seem to turn. So there's a combination of steps there and then a skip at the very end, right? So it's a very subtle melody, doesn't venture that much. And then the pre-chorus. How long can we face away from the problems and the battles that we've got? And then here, I didn't necessarily rhyme, these two lines here. I didn't think it was necessary. We're asking a question and I really want the focus to be on the chorus that's about to come up. So I think a little bit of, going outside of the traditional rhyming scheme is okay here. We don't really need to rhyme this. And again, just referring back to the message of each section, the pre-chorus is talking about what will it take before we change. So I interpreted that as how long can we face away from the problems and the battles that we've got? So I'm literally asking a question here so that the chorus can then act as the answer. So for me, that's really important. And then the chorus, right? So that contains the title of the song, If We Could Work It Out. And then naturally, the hook itself, work it out, that is the main part of this melody. And then the if we could, that's leading into the downbeat, which lands on the word work. So I want work it out to be on the strong beat 1 of the bar. And then the if we could is the pickup into it. So it leads a lot of momentum, drives the chorus forward. And then I kind of mimic the same melody shape here. Set our differences aside, right? So it gives it that symmetry. And then here we kind of change in lines 3 and 4. We'll come together, we'll go wherever we're needed, we won't hide. And then I sing this F sharp here. So the key of this song is in E major. So if I sing this F sharp on hide, then that's the supertonic. That's the second note of the scale, which will naturally want to resolve back down to the tonic because the 2 naturally wants to go back down to the 1. So notice how, because the melody here is the same in lines 1 and 2, and the melody is kind of similar in lines 3 and 4, we still have to rhyme, right? So for the rhyming, I actually wanted to keep the 2 and 4. I wanted to rhyme lines 2 and 4, and so we did that with aside and then hide. And then very similar here with the second half. If we could work it out, here I said if we would work it out. So now this is about us taking that action, making that decision, whereas the first half of the chorus is more about what could happen if we decided to take that action. Whereas the second half, it's like, okay, now we know what could happen. So are we going to make that happen? So that's why I use the word would here. Hopefully that kind of makes sense there. And then, yes, the lines 2 and 4 rhyme with through and anew. So that's how that one works there. Oh yeah, and in line 3, I kind of wanted to make these words pretty similar. So kind of like a rhyme, right? Together, wherever. I think that's a rhyme. I think you can consider that a rhyme because, ether, ever. So that consonant sound changes a little bit, but the vowel is the same. And then we'll come with peace, set the prison free. So that's another rhyme there, peace and free. And then anew rhymes with through. So lines 2 and 4 rhyme, and then line 3 rhymes within itself, internal rhyme right there. And then, and then verse 2 is very similar. So got and fought. Again, verse 2 is all about making sure that the message is even more descriptive and goes beyond verse 1, because that would be a little boring if it just kind of repeated what verse 1 was doing. That's the role of the chorus is to really drive in that same message over and over, right? So verse 2, we can be a little bit more descriptive. And then here, again, I'm just rhyming lines 2 and 4. So it's no wonder why everyone's scared, holding on to what they've got. It's hard to see how life will be when the final battle's never fought. It's like we don't try at all to see another's point of view. We're quick to judge and hold a grudge. Again, rhyming here, judge and grudge, and then C and B. So C and B, right? And then refusing something new. So new kind of rhymes with view there as well. Okay. The thing is, though, when you're rhyming, you do want to make sure that you're choosing rhymes not just for the sake of rhymes. So you do want to make sure that those two rhyming words are correlated in your message, right? Because if they're not, then it really does sound cheesy because your lyrics won't make sense. And then that rhyme just is that final cherry on top to say, yeah, this is full of cheese. But if you make sure that those two words that are rhyming are directly correlated into the message of your song, then that's when you get a meaningful lyric, I think. And then pre-chorus, chorus 2 are the exact same. And then finally, let's take a look at the bridge. Again, this is us being positive, taking that action to make a difference, right? So I'm saying, when will we learn to put each other before ourselves? And then when will we, another starting with the same 3 words, basically. So it's kind of like a period in a way, like a musical period, starting with the same basic idea and then contrasting at the second half of the phrase. When will we learn to put each other before ourselves? When will we start to walk together and leave no one behind? So no rhyming here because we already have the same familiar start of these questions. And then we could turn from it all, or we could take a stand for once. No longer shall we hide. So again, here I'm rhyming 2 and 4, behind and hide. So subtly, I think the audience feels this. I think the listener can kind of feel this, even though if you're, not completely actively analyzing it, you might not notice it. But subconsciously, you kind of feel that there's these rhymes happening on lines 2 and 4 in every single section. So that's kind of the rhyme scheme I went with in this song. Rhyming is super important. Again, you just want to make sure that it's directly correlated with the message. And then that will make sure that it doesn't sound cheesy and the lyric actually means something, right? And you want to stay consistent with the message as well. You don't want to be sending mixed signals, mixed messages throughout your song. Each song that you write should have one specific message that it's aiming for. So that's the overall lyric and the approach to the message. Let's kind of dive into the musical chords themselves. So E major is my favorite key. So naturally, I wanted to write this song in E major. And I haven't written too many songs using more of my lower range. I have quite a few songs where I'm singing higher, but I really wanted to, I didn't really want to show off a lot in the song, if that makes sense. I wanted to focus more on the lyric. So hence why I went with slightly lower here. But in the intro, let me just play it once for you and then I'll walk through the chords. So it sounds like this. Okay, that's the intro. So we start with the 6th chord, C sharp minor. And before I talk about that, notice how the bass is descending. So we walk from C sharp down to B, so G sharp minor, but in first inversion, down to A, so going down by step, going down to G sharp. So then the next one you might expect might be the 2 chord, the F sharp minor chord, right? But in this case, I always like to throw in a bit of a surprise within really any chord progression that I'm writing. So I actually threw in the D major chord, which is actually the flat 7. So we have the 6th chord, we have the 3 chord, so minor 3, we have the 4 chord going to the 1 chord, so it's kind of a plagal cadence there with this really smooth stepping down bass, stepwise down, right? Then we go to the flat 7. It's like, whoa, that's like maybe a ray of sunshine poking out through the clouds. And then as the orchestration comes back in and it really just expands the arrangement, we take it even lower and we repeat this chord progression, right? So the flat 7 is a really common device that I tend to use quite a bit. And then right after that, then we go right into the verse and keep things nice and steady, nice and simple, just sticking entirely diatonic here in the verse. So going from the 1 chord, going to the 3 chord, going to the 4 chord, and then going to the flat 6 chord. Again, here is the non-diatonic chord here. So I lied, not entirely diatonic, but a bit of modal mixture as well. And then back to E major, 1 chord to the 3, to the 4, to the flat 6. Now, I knew I wanted the pre-chorus to start on the C sharp minor chord, so start on the 6th chord, but I wasn't entirely comfortable with the C chord at the end of the verse going up a half step to the C sharp minor chord. I was trying to think like, is there a better way to transition between these two chords? But after playing it for a little bit, I started to get used to it actually. And I feel like this C major to C sharp minor movement, while it is kind of abrupt and you do definitely notice it, I think it actually works in this context. I can't exactly put my finger on why, but I think it's just that subtle movement of moving up just a little bit that tells the listener that we're moving into a new section. And I think it does something special for the listening experience. So I really like that. Then in the pre-chorus, we have the 6th chord, right? C sharp minor. And then here, I wanted to do an F sharp 7. I wanted to do a dominant 7 here. So we're introducing the A sharp, which is the 3rd of that F sharp dominant 7 chord, right? F sharp 7. This is essentially like a secondary dominance because the next chord would be a B chord. If we were in the key of B major, the dominant would be F sharp going down to B. In this case, that's exactly what we're doing, except it's not a regular B triad. I'm doing an A over B first, which is setting up the half cadence. So it's like the 5 chord, right, with a 4 over the 5, and then we settle into the complete 5 with an extension being the flat 9. So it's like the 6th chord, the 5 of 5, so secondary dominance, then 4 over 5 going to 5, except with a flat 9, okay? And that's the pre-chorus. So that one is, yeah, you'll notice like basically every section so far has had a non-diatonic chord in it. The intro has the flat 7, the verse has the flat 6, and now the pre-chorus has the secondary dominant. So the 5 of the 5 resolving to the 5, or the 4 over the 5. Now we move on to the choruses. So one sneaky thing I kind of did here, and I personally really like it, but it starts on the 1 chord, and it then goes down to the 1 chord again, but it's over the D, which is basically E7, but in 3rd inversion, right? So our bass is again stepping down here, and then we go down to the A chord, which is the 4 chord. So again, this is another secondary dominant, by the way, because if E goes to A, then that's basically a 4 to 1 in A major. But here we're going from E7, which is basically the 4 chord in A major, going to an A major chord, but it's inverted. But that's still a 4 to 1 in A major. So this is another secondary dominant here. And then I kind of work my way up back to the beginning of the progression. So we start with the 2 chord, 1, 6, 4, and then 4 over 5. So the bass line gets to walk up again. 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. And at the beginning of the chorus, we walk down. We went from 1, 7, 6, and then I started from the 2 and just walked up. You know? So again, the 1 chord, 5 of 4, going to 4, and then 2, 1, 6, 4, 4 over 5, back to the 1. Now this time, the sneaky thing is instead of, again, going back down to that E over D, this time I wanted to kind of reminisce the verse a little bit. So going up to the 3 chord instead of going down to the E over D, now we did a G sharp minor 7. Then going to the A chord, which is the 4 chord, and then very similar, 2, 1, 6, 4, 5. And then instead of going to 1 for the instrumental, I wanted to go back to the 6, which is a deceptive cadence. So now we have the C sharp minor chord, F sharp 7, again, the secondary dominant 5 of 5, going to 4 over 5, and then to the 5, 7 with a flat 9. And yeah, so plenty of non-diatonic chords here, kind of interspersed between the diatonic chords. Like this is my personal approach. I think that's why my approach maybe sounds like Disney or musical theater, because I think I was heavily inspired by Alan Menken's music, a lot of Nintendo music, and they like to intersperse their diatonic music with spicy non-diatonic chords. It just adds interest. It makes it feel more lively in a way. And I think it's really effective for this style. So that's the idea. Then really quickly, let's go over the bridge as well. And here we start on the 6. Now we go back to the 3. Yep, going to the 3. So 6 going to 3. And then I debated on going back to the 6 and doing the 3 again, to the G sharp minor. But I want to switch it up a bit. So I went from 3 to 6, then I just went to 4. No, sorry, wait, let me think. No, I went from 6 to 3. Sorry, yeah, 6 to 3 to the 4, back to the 3, you know? And because the C sharp minor and the A major chord, they share 2 notes in common, the C sharp and the E, then naturally it sounds pretty seamless when the same melody is kind of singing on top. Okay, and then this part is my favorite part of the bridge. So the second half of the bridge kind of goes like this. We could turn from it all, or we could take a stand for once. No longer shall we hide. And then we modulate up a half step to the key of F. And then the progressions are the same, but just modulated up a semitone. But let me walk through that a little bit. So we start from the 4 chord. Here's another element of modal mixture, bringing in the minor 4 chord, which is native to the parallel minor of E minor, right? Minor 4 going to 1, so minor plagal cadence. And now we speed up the harmonic rhythm, so the chords come a bit quicker, and it increases the intensity. So we go from 1, 5, 6, deceptive cadence, back to the 1 in second inversion. Then we go up to the 2 chord, and then very similar to 1, 6, 4, and then 4 or 5, to the 5, 7, and then instead of resolving back to E right away, we step up for a second, and then we modulate now to the key of F major, and everything is basically the same. So there we go. That's all the chords. That's everything that is going on behind the scenes of the music itself, of the harmony especially. Yeah, and I hope that kind of makes sense. If you have any questions about this specifically, let me know. This was a lot of fun to write. I can't exactly remember if I wrote the lyrics first or the music first. I believe I wrote the lyrics first because I really wanted to hone in that message and then make sure the music is accommodating the lyrics in this case. And that's something I've really tried to work on recently, is because I've always really written my music first and then added lyrics later. I've always either tried to force the lyrics to fit within my melodies, or the lyrics, just made no sense. So I think more recently, starting with this approach, lyric first, especially if music comes more naturally to me, then I think I should focus on the lyric first and then make sure that the music is accommodating the lyrics. So then they both work in harmony together in a nice way. And that's kind of my general approach nowadays. So hopefully that makes sense. But let me quickly show you an interview I did with Mattia, actually. We kind of chatted about his orchestration process. So now that you know kind of my process behind writing the tune, let's kind of dive into his mind and see how he actually arranged the tune. So I asked him a couple questions. We'll hear from him a little bit. And then I highly encourage you to check out the video on his channel as well, so that you can get a sense of how he broke it down from step by step. So enjoy our little chat together, talking about the orchestration behind Work It Out. All right, man. So, Mattia, welcome, man. Yeah, thanks again for doing the orchestration for the song. It sounds beautiful, and I've told you that many times, but I wanted to pick your brain a little bit regarding this arrangement. So maybe you can just walk me through, once I sent you the piece of music, how did you go about interpreting that? What was the certain direction you were aiming for with your orchestration? And, maybe you can walk us through your decision making there.
I think probably the very first thing I did was just going back and listening to some music, actually, because it's not like a style of music I'm particularly like comfortable with, and that's partially why I was interested in this collaboration, because it is something that you do very well, and I thought I had something to learn from you. So just I went on Spotify, kind of listened to some references, some modern ones, some of the older ones. I think I had a track in mind. Not that my arrangement is based on anything specific, but I felt like having some sort of vague inspiration and having some sort of roadmap could help a little bit. And I can't remember the title of the track exactly. Like, it was in the Hercules.
Oh, Go the Distance? I mean, that's the most popular one, right?
That's the one. That's the one.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah. And I think you'll hear some similarities, like in terms of aesthetics more than anything else. Like, I didn't necessarily borrow any of the elements, but yeah, like a little bit of that, listening to a little bit of some more modern kind of Disney style tracks, like like frozen or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that was the first step to me. And after that, I kind of made a choice, whether I wanted to do a more modern arrangement, or like a more retro, traditional kind of style,
Hmm.
Disney style, arrangement. So I just went for something in between.
Yeah.
And just with that, like, with that in mind, I started just laying down some of the rhythm section, actually.
Mm.
Just sketched out, not sketched out, I actually recorded the whole, rhythm section arrangement before anything else, and laid on top of that all the orchestral elements later on.
Mm.
And that was, like, great help, because it kind of helped me to, trace the overall dramatic arch of the piece, where some of the rises and falls would naturally land into the arrangement.
Right.
And kind of, yeah, like, built the orchestration around the rhythm section, essentially.
Yeah,
So
it makes a
what?
lot of yeah, yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that makes a lot of sense. Quick side question then. Were any of those elements you recorded live?
Yeah, like, all guitars and basses. Like, I'm a guitarist and a bassist, so
Awesome.
guitars and bass were recorded by myself.
Yeah. You can tell like it has that natural, authentic feeling, which I really enjoyed. And I enjoy that you also mentioned the kind of dramatic arc throughout the piece. So maybe you can walk us through how you kind of followed that arc. Maybe what was the kind of vision there? Because obviously the first and second verses are a little bit more subdued, than the choruses are more reserved for those high climactic moments. So maybe orchestrationally, what were some techniques you incorporated to give it that emotional high?
I mean, like, my overall, like, philosophy to orchestration is, in general, like, to try and do the most with the least,
Mm,
and to practice, how do you say, restraints, like, to practice, saving um saving the most powerful elements for the very end,
yeah.
or for the climax of the piece.
Hmm.
So I knew that the climax of the piece would eventually be the very last chorus, you know so that's basically it. Like, everything kind of was built around the choruses, because,
Hmm.
knowing that, you would maybe save the brass, that is the more like, the more powerful kind of um orchestral color you can
Yeah,
have, right?
for sure.
I knew I would save the brass for the choruses, and that was a conscious decision before even starting, um, to actually record any of the orchestral elements,
Mm.
right? So that
Oh, yeah.
that was that was probably the first step, in terms of tracing the dramatic arch. And then, is pop arranging 101, right?
Mm.
Like, as you move to the chorus, you would, I don't know, for example, um open up the cymbals on the drum kit, right? Like,
Hmm.
move to the right, and
Yeah.
maybe just play the verses on the hi-hat, or try to have a tighter feel on the bridge, something like that. That's just general kind of principles that are good for any styles of music, not necessarily, a Disney style track.
Yeah.
And and of course, there are some overlaps as well. Like, it's not like you would not do I wouldn't do, a pop ballad, like, dramatically different from what I just did for this particular track.
Hmm.
There are some overlaps with any genre of music, not just this.
For sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and speaking of instrumentation, I know there's a lot of confusion sometimes about the smaller, finer details of an arrangement, right? Like what gives it that final 10% polish? Because usually in this style of music, we can hear the sweeping strings, we hear the brass coming in, the woodwinds interacting, but are there maybe any Not to, super put you on the spot, but like, are there any devices that you use to give it that final spark and really take it up that next level?
Yeah, I mean, like, as I said, as we said before, like I tried to combine some of the more modern kind of elements with like a rhythm section, and some of the more retro kind of elements inspired by traditional kind of Disney style arrangements.
Mm-hmm.
So like doing I didn't necessarily want to use too many runs and flourishes and colors like that, because I feel like they could make the track sound very cheesy like straight away.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, it's not something that you can entirely avoid, of course,
Yeah.
but I did try to limit myself to that regard. But in terms of, to me, what gives this particular Disney style vibe in general is having a slightly more retro kind of sensibility to orchestration. Like, you would voice maybe um, you would do some harmonies a little bit more denser than you would for a regular kind of pop song, or
Mm.
you would do, I don't know, you would add more extensions to a
Yeah.
chord that you would normally do, once again, for something that is a little bit more commercial, a little bit more modern.
Mm.
Yes, and that's, to me, like, probably the bigger difference between doing a Disney style orchestration than like a regular pop arrangement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
Totally fair.
also
Yeah.
other things, like simple things,
Mm.
like doubling the vocals in unison is not something that you necessarily hear in a lot of other genres of music.
Mm.
And that works very well, switching between different instruments frequently, and and within a shorter span of time. That is something that works very well, and it is something that is very Disney.
Yeah.
Like, there are different ways. I think there are other ways to evoke that kind of mood without necessarily just going nuts with the runs and trios and glisten.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Back to what you said, like doing less with or sorry, doing more with less stuff, is sometimes literally just taking stuff away and knowing when to restrain yourself. So totally makes sense there. Um, so one last question, because you also worked on the mix for this as well, which is awesome. So I'm sure we're kind of curious how you approach that as well. Like what were your core, I guess, focuses when working on the mix, and what was the type of sound you were trying to achieve from that?
I mean, like, mixing is never like a huge part of my process, because, like, to me, like, if if the arrangement works on its own, it's already been mixed in a way,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I tend not to pull faders too much, and tend not to balance with compressors too much, because I try to fix these little issues you may find later on during a mix, like
Mm-hmm.
earlier,
Yeah.
as I'm orchestrating. I would, if something is not like, if something is kind of popping out in an unpleasant way, I would remove it entirely. I would not think, oh, okay, I can fix it later on
Mm-hmm.
within within the mix. So, like, mixing is not necessarily um something I'm too concerned about. And but yeah, just a little, it's just more about polishing some of the it's just more about polishing and just kind of make things a little bit better. But I don't think is going to, like, my mixes in general, I don't think they make the music substantially different from when it's not
Right.
mixed yet. Just adding a little bit of reverb,
Yeah, yeah. Just gelling it
not-
together. It's enhancing the overall product. Yeah.
I mean, maybe for this particular track, I use a little bit more compression than I normally would, and that's only because you know, the vocal track you sent me is kind of very, how do you say, is much less dynamic than the rest of the orchestra.
Mm.
So if you have a backing track that is very suddenly goes very loud, and then it goes very quiet, it's very difficult to balance it
Yeah.
with vocals. So I used a few different stages of compression to kind of mediate that problem. But yeah, I mean, that's not like that's nothing major, like a couple of dBs of compression, nothing
Hmm.
more.
Hmm. Fantastic. Well, thank you, Mattia. Yeah, that's great to get some insights into the orchestration process, and yeah, we're looking forward to seeing your breakdown on the channel. All right, I hope you enjoyed that little chat. So without further ado, let me show you the complete song in its entirety. You'll get a sense of how it's written, of course, and then how the arrangement kind of enhances the message and the lyrics. But don't forget to actually check out his channel as well, because we talked about, or sorry, Mattia actually broke down how he arranged it as well, and then we did a little interview of him asking me questions about how I actually wrote the piece as well. So definitely check that one out. I'll share it with you at the very end of this video. But without further ado, enjoy the full version of Work It Out. It's like I've never seen the world before. Everywhere I seem to turn. Another fight, another war. Every nation burns. And every night when I lay down, the moment when I close my eyes, my thoughts come back, they scream out loud, always asking why. How long can we face away from the problems and the battles that we've got? If we could work it out, set our differences aside, we'll come together, we'll go wherever we're needed, we won't hide. Work it out, understand what they go through. We'll come with peace, set the prison free, so we can start again anew. It's no wonder why everyone's scared, holding on to what they've got. It's hard to see how life will be when the final battle's never fought. It's like we don't try at all to see another's point of view. We're quick to judge and hold a grudge, refusing something new. How long can we face away from the problems and the battles that we've got? If we could work it out, set our differences aside, we'll come together, we'll go wherever we're needed, we won't hide. If we would work it out, understand what they go through, we'll come with peace, set the prison free, so we can start again anew. When will we learn to put each other before ourselves? When will we start to walk together and leave no one behind? We could turn from it all, or we could take a stand for once. No longer shall we hide. differences aside. We'll come together, we'll go wherever we're needed, we won't hide. If we would work it out, understand what they go through, we'll come with peace, set the prison free, so we can start again.